My dad gave my brother the business, the house, and even my college fund. He told people I wasn't interested. But when the investors asked for the founder, they looked up and saw me walk in. My name is Celeste Rowan, and for most of my life, I was treated like a ghost in my own family. I was the daughter who stayed up until 2 a.m., helping my father write business plans, the one who skipped prom to code a working logistics algorithm, the one who believed, stupidly, that if I just kept showing up, he'd finally say, "This business is yours too." But when it came time to go to college, the tuition money was gone, quietly rerouted into family investments. I remember sitting on the phone with financial aid, shaking as my father told everyone I had changed my mind about college. Just like that, I was written out of the story. He handed the company to my older brother, Chase, the golden boy who never built a thing in his life. He gave him the house, the trust, even my name on the patents. And when people asked where I went, he said, she wasn't interested. They made me invisible, and for years I stayed that way, until one meeting, one room, one moment where the board of investors asked, "So who's the real founder?" And that's when I walked in. He didn't even turn around at first, but when he did, his face said it all. I wasn't interested. I just wasn't invited. Now I don't knock. I take the keys. My father, Martin Rowan, always wanted a legacy, but what he really meant was a son who could carry his name, not a daughter who carried his vision. From the outside, the Rowan family looked tight-knit, aspirational. We lived in a big house in Connecticut. My father owned a tech consulting company, and my mother, Elaine, hosted charity brunches like it was a full-time job. But inside those walls, everything was on quiet. No yelling, no warmth either. My father ruled with approval or silence, and silence was his favorite punishment. As a kid, I was sharp, always building, breaking things apart to understand how they worked. While other kids played dress-up, I built apps on the old Dell in the basement. My dad noticed. He started calling me his little assistant. I felt proud, chosen. He'd let me sit in on calls, review his slide decks. I helped him outline a logistics optimization idea when I was 15. We used to map it out in Sharpie on the garage wall like it was a blueprint for our future. Back then, I thought we were building something together. That's the lie that stayed with me the longest. My brother Chase was 2 years older and effortlessly charming. Mediocre in school, but good at sports, and even better at smiling at the right time. My father didn't care that Chase had no interest in the business. He made it clear early on, Chase would inherit everything. I'd be the helper, the background. Still, I kept helping. I gave up summer internships to support the early stages of the business. I skipped senior trips to work with my dad on funding proposals. I wrote the original pitch deck that later got their first investor meeting. But when the time came to file paperwork for the LLC, I didn't even get a heads up. I found out when a legal envelope arrived at our house. I recognized the company name, Rowan Global, but inside, only my father's and Chase's names were listed as co-founders. I confronted my dad. I asked quietly why my name wasn't there. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. He just looked at me and said, "Celeste, you're young. You'll have your own thing one day. This isn't about credit. It's about family." Then he walked away. Conversation over. I cried in the shower that night and every night after that for a week. Still, I convinced myself to stay loyal. I thought, maybe this is just how things work. I told myself to be patient, but it wasn't patience. It was silence, and silence gave them room to erase me. Then came college. I got into MIT, full acceptance, partial scholarship. I was over the moon. I ran into the kitchen waving the letter like it was a lottery ticket. My mom smiled but said nothing. My dad barely looked up from his phone. When I tried to pay the deposit, my account bounced, gone. My college fund, $87,000 in bonds and savings, had been repurposed. My mother admitted it in a whisper one morning while making tea. "Your father said the business needed it, but it'll come back to you tenfold. You'll see." I didn't see anything but the inside of a local community college after that. No MIT, no dorm room, no start to the life I'd worked so hard for. That was the first time I thought about walking away. But walking away without closure is its own kind of prison. So I stayed longer than I should have. I watched as Chase was given everything. The company, the house, even the spotlight. He took credit for ideas I sketched in my notebooks. He laughed at interviews, saying, "My dad taught me everything I know." Meanwhile, I was tutoring calculus just to afford my books. Every time I saw their faces in the news, I felt myself shrink a little more. The worst part? No one saw me. Not my father, not my brother, not even my mother. To them, I was the smart girl who could be self-sufficient, the one who didn't need things handed to her, the one who didn't seem interested. But interest was never the issue. It was visibility and value, and they never gave me either. That's when I made a decision, quietly and without announcement. If I wasn't going to be given a seat at the table, I'd build my own damn table. One day they'd hear me knock. Or maybe I'd just walk in without knocking at all. The day I finally left home wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no tearful goodbyes. Just silence. I packed 2 duffel bags, left a short note on the kitchen counter, and stepped out the front door of the house my father later transferred to Chase's name. It didn't even sting anymore. I was numb by then, exhausted from fighting for space in a family that only seemed to remember I existed when something needed fixing. I didn't have a plan, but I had my laptop, a resume, and every ounce of pain I'd spent years swallowing. And somewhere in that pain, I found clarity. I wasn't going to beg anyone to see me ever again. At first, I crashed on a friend's couch in Boston, working nights doing back-end development for small clients and startups. I ate cheap ramen and logged 16-hour days just to survive, while Chase was smiling on magazine covers and my dad was getting visionary awards for the company I helped shape. I was building in silence. But something shifted the day I stumbled across an old binder in my storage box. It was beat up, scribbled all over with my teenage handwriting. Inside were early notes, diagrams, and the original code concepts we used for the company's logistics platform. That binder was proof of my role, of my brain, of my presence. I hadn't just contributed, I'd built the engine. That's when I made a choice. I wasn't going to dwell on what I lost anymore. I was going to build something of my own, not as a reaction, but as a declaration. I started a tech consulting firm from my laptop. Quietly, no last name, no family ties, just me. I called it NAWOR Systems. Rowan spelled backward. It was petty, I'll admit it, but it reminded me that sometimes the best way forward is starting where they thought your story ended. I started small, 1 client, then 2. I refined my model, specializing in real-time delivery optimization systems, and slowly built a reputation under the radar. I made just enough to get out of my friend's apartment and into a tiny 1-bedroom with peeling paint and an ancient heater. But it was mine. Every dollar I earned alone. Every mistake I fixed without a father's voice reminding me how incapable I supposedly was. By year 3, I had a team of 5. We didn't look like much, just a scrappy group in a rented co-working space. But we delivered. One of our apps got picked up by a logistics startup on the West Coast. That deal helped me expand to a small office in New York and hire 3 more people. The difference between Chase's growth and mine? Mine was built on sweat. His was built on a trust fund and a last name. I didn't chase headlines. I chased sustainability. And while they mocked my absence in interviews, I was learning how to build without being anyone's shadow. Then something unexpected happened. Julian Park, a venture capitalist I hadn't seen since my father's early pitch meetings, reached out. He'd found NAWOR through a client referral and wanted to meet. We sat across from each other in a cafe. I was nervous, wondering if he even remembered me. He did. He remembered the quiet girl in the back of the conference room, the one taking notes, asking the real questions. He asked what happened, and I told him. All of it. Julian didn't flinch. He said he wasn't surprised. Then he dropped the first seed of what would change everything. He said Rowan Global had lost its edge. Innovation stalled. Leadership under Chase had plateaued. Investors were getting concerned. There was talk of restructuring, maybe even outside acquisition. I remember gripping my coffee cup like it was the last thread holding me to the floor, because in that moment, I knew something that not even my father or brother had figured out yet. They were sitting on a sinking ship, and I was holding the blueprint to the lifeboat. Julian leaned forward and said, If you're ready, I think they are too. I didn't smile, I didn't speak. But in my mind, I had already walked back into that boardroom. This time, not as the girl no one saw. I didn't sleep the night after that conversation with Julian. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my apartment. Still modest, still small, but for the first time in years, I felt something other than resentment. I felt fire, purpose. I wasn't chasing revenge, I was chasing restoration. I wanted back what was mine, not out of ego, but out of principle. Because they didn't just rob me of credit, they rewrote my story, erased me from my own history, and handed it to a man who never earned it. So I got to work. First, I opened that old binder again. This time, I scanned everything, my notes, the early logistics diagrams, and the sketches from our garage wall days. I backed it all up, time-stamped it. I even found emails from my teenage years, sent to my father with subject lines like, "Version 2.0 code improvements, please review." Emails where I shared updates, bugs I fixed, and notes that he later repackaged as team breakthroughs. I still had my original laptop too, the one I used to write the first prototypes. I powered it up. It groaned like a dinosaur waking from a coma, but there it was. A local file dated March 16, 2011, titled Rowan Logi, Base V 1.1. I wasn't just a helper, I was the foundation. Julian connected me with a legal team. They reviewed everything. They didn't recommend a lawsuit, at least not yet. What they saw was an opportunity for something much bigger: acquisition through credibility. Because the truth was, Rowan Global's board had been quietly searching for new leadership. And not just leadership, they wanted innovation, proof of vision, a plan. Julian and I began preparing a formal investor package under NAWOR systems. It contained everything: my current performance metrics, future tech expansions, and most importantly, a historical record of my IP contributions to Rowan Global's origin. It told the real story, the one no one had been allowed to hear. But we didn't stop there. Julian arranged a private lunch with two of Rowan Global's board members, people I remembered from those early investor meetings. They were polite, professional, and stunned. One of them said, "We always assumed your father left you out because you weren't interested." There it was again, that lie. I responded, calm and clear, "No." I was never invited. I handed them the binder. I watched their eyes flick back and forth between the pages. One paused on a hand-drawn flowchart and muttered, "Wait, this looks like the original UX system Chase claimed he designed." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Julian then delivered the punch. We were offering to buy controlling interest. Through a quiet buyout, no media storm, no courtroom drama, just an exchange of power backed by undeniable proof and the promise of innovation, Rowan Global was failing to produce. It was bold, risky, but real. They asked for time. I gave them 7 days. In those 7 days, I barely slept. I kept working, running NAWOR, preparing transition plans, and rereading old emails I'd written when I still believed my father saw me as more than just a shadow. Every word made me stronger. Every ignored message became a brick in the wall I was now standing on. Then came the call. "Be in New York Friday morning, 10 a.m., Rowan Boardroom. Bring your package. The full board will be present. Your father and brother, too." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. I didn't shake. I didn't panic. I packed that same binder, now carefully preserved. Wore a suit I bought years ago on clearance but tailored to fit me perfectly. I stepped into that elevator with Julian beside me and the kind of calm I'd spent a decade building. When the elevator doors opened and we stepped into the glass-walled conference room, every pair of eyes turned. My father was seated at the head of the table. My brother lounged like he owned the air. Neither expected to see me. Chase smirked. "What's she doing here?" I didn't answer him. I looked straight at the board and handed them the binder, a formal presentation packet, and a flash drive. "This," I said, "is the real beginning of your company, and this," I placed another folder beside it, "is its future." The room went still. My father leaned forward, face hardening. "Celeste, you're making a mistake." I met his eyes, steady. "Number, I made a mistake when I believed you'd ever give me a place at this table. I'm not asking anymore." Julian opened his briefcase and distributed signed letters of interest. Investors, his firm, and 3 others, backing Nawor's acquisition proposal. Silence. They thought they'd buried me. But I wasn't buried. I was planted, and now I had roots they couldn't cut. The boardroom was too quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when power shifts without anyone saying a word. The men and women seated around the long walnut table flipped through the documents I'd placed in front of them, some blinking in disbelief, others already aware of what this meant. My father stared straight ahead, arms crossed tightly over his chest like a man refusing to drown, even while the tide rose past his mouth. Chase, ever the showman, leaned back in his chair like he thought it would all blow over. "What is this?" he asked, laughing a little too hard. "Is this some performance? Are we doing family therapy now?" I didn't flinch. I didn't even look at him. Julian stepped forward instead. "This isn't personal, Chase. This is business. And the people in this room deserve to know the truth about where this company started and where it's going." One of the board members, a woman named Denise who had been with Rowan Global since its early years, cleared her throat. "I remember this diagram," she said softly, pointing to one of the photocopied pages in my binder. "This was from our second meeting before the first round of funding. Chase, you told us you sketched this during a retreat." Chase looked blank. My father cut in, voice tight and low. "That was years ago. You can't rewrite history now just because you want a piece of something you walked away from." And there it was, the lie that had followed me like a shadow for over a decade. I walked away? Number I was pushed out. I turned my gaze to the room, not to argue, not to beg, but to tell the truth. "I didn't leave," I said, voice steady. "I wasn't given the chance to stay. I built this company's foundation from the garage. The original logistics model? Mine. The pitch deck that got you your first meeting with Denise? I wrote it at 17 while my friends were at graduation parties. The back-end framework that supported your first major contract? It's still running off my early prototype." I paused, then placed a copy of my MIT acceptance letter, dated, signed, and stamped, on the table. You know what I was doing the week this letter came in? I was sleeping on a friend's couch because my college fund had mysteriously disappeared. He, I nodded to my father, used it to float this company while telling the world I wasn't interested. Nobody spoke, because what do you say to a woman who's just laid bare her scars and her evidence? Julian stepped beside me and pulled out a clean proposal. Nawar Systems is offering an equity-based acquisition of Rowan Global. This includes new leadership, revised tech strategy, and investment from 4 major backers who believe this company has value, once the right person is in charge. More pages were passed, legal details, financial breakdowns, performance comparisons. Chase scoffed. "This is insane. You're not even a real CEO. You've been freelancing in some basement for years, and now you want to play empire builder?" I turned to him for the first time that morning. "You inherited a throne and thought that made you a king. I built a company from nothing. 1 contract, 1 night without sleep, 1 year without family support at a time. I don't play empire. I build legacies." He opened his mouth to argue, but my father spoke before he could. His voice was quieter now, strained. "You really want to burn this down just to make a point?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw what I'd never seen before. Not power, not control, fear, because he realized this wasn't about revenge. This was about truth, about exposure, about the daughter he underestimated walking into his kingdom. Not to steal it, but to take back what had always been hers. "I'm not here to burn anything," I said. "I'm here to lead, and if you can't handle that, step aside." Julian closed the meeting with a final word. "The vote will be held in 48 hours. Until then, review the documents. Do your due diligence, but understand, change isn't coming, it's here." He nodded, and we gathered our files. As I turned to leave, I caught my father's eyes one last time. There was no anger in mine, just clarity. He'd spent decades pretending I didn't exist in his empire. Now I was the empire. And the door? It didn't slam. It swung open and stayed open behind me. Because this time I wasn't walking away. I was walking in. The meeting was over, but the silence in that boardroom followed me out like a ghost. As I stepped into the elevator, binder in hand, I could still feel the heat of my father's stare, the stunned disbelief on Chase's face. For a long time, those looks would have crushed me. I would have second-guessed myself all the way down to the ground floor. But not anymore. I didn't tremble. I didn't look back, because I had finally realized the most powerful truth of all. I was never just the daughter. I was the backbone, the architect, the reason this company existed, and I was done letting them rewrite my legacy into a footnote. Back in my office at NAWOR, I laid the binder on my desk like a relic. It had traveled with me through every low point of my life. The folds, the old pen marks, the coffee stains, they weren't imperfections. They were proof of time, of work, of every moment I didn't give up, even when it felt easier to disappear. That evening I got the call. The vote passed, by a narrow margin, 5-4, but enough. The board had approved my acquisition and appointed me interim CEO of Rowan Global, effective immediately. I sat in silence after I hung up, staring out my office window at a city that once felt too big for someone like me. And now, it felt like mine. The next week moved fast. My first day back at Rowan was surreal. The receptionists were new, the branding had changed, but the bones of the place were the same. The halls I used to walk in high school summers as Martin's daughter now echoed with something different. Authority. Some employees whispered as I passed. Some avoided eye contact. Others smiled. Quiet, cautious, but genuine. They'd heard the story by then. Word spreads fast when a family's buried secret becomes the company's new leader. Chase had already cleared out his office. No goodbye, no note. Just a bitter silence and a few headlines about his strategic departure. My father, on the other hand, requested a meeting. I agreed, partly out of curiosity, and partly because I needed to see for myself if the man who once said, "It's not about credit, it's about family," had changed at all. He arrived late, sat across from me like a stranger. "I never expected this from you," he said quietly. I leaned forward. "That's the problem. You never expected anything from me at all." He looked older now, slower, as if the weight of being wrong had finally found his shoulders. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "I didn't think this world was built for you." I laughed, short, cold. "You mean a world where women have to fight twice as hard for half the credit? You didn't protect me. You erased me." He opened his mouth but didn't speak. "I'm not angry anymore," I told him. "Anger gave me fuel. But this is clarity. I know who I am now, and I don't need your permission to lead." He nodded once, slow. "I hope you know what you're doing." I smiled. "I always did. You just never looked long enough to see it." And with that, I stood. The meeting was over. I didn't fire him. I didn't drag him through the mud. I offered him an honorary advisory role, ceremonial, with no decision-making power. A quiet retirement with his dignity intact. It wasn't forgiveness, it was closure, and that was more than he ever gave me. Weeks passed. I restructured the product team, merged my NAWOR software with Rowan's infrastructure. Our first rollout under my leadership launched ahead of schedule and under budget. Press took notice. Clients returned. Employees started leaving anonymous notes on my desk. "Thank you for seeing us." But the most meaningful moment came months later at an industry conference. I was scheduled to speak on innovation in logistics technology. Before I even stepped on stage, I saw Julian in the crowd, smiling like a proud older brother. But what caught my eye was a group in the front row, young women barely out of college, holding notebooks and phones ready. They weren't here for Chase. They weren't here for Martin. They were here because they heard a woman built something, lost it, and came back to take it without apology. I walked to the podium, spoke clearly, firmly, without shrinking. I didn't tell the whole story, but I told the part that mattered. People often say you have to be invited to the table. I disagree. Sometimes you have to build your own, then walk in, pull up a chair and say, "I'll take it from here." The applause was real, and so was my place. Leadership wasn't what I thought it would be. I had imagined walking into that corner office and feeling triumphant, powerful, like I'd finally proven something. But the truth? The first few days felt strange, heavy, lonely even. I wasn't celebrating in champagne-soaked joy. I was building, again, but this time, I was building something with my name on it. The team at Rowan Global was bruised. Not broken, but bruised. Years of misdirection under Chase's leadership had left morale low, innovation stagnant, and trust thin. People weren't looking for a savior, they were looking for someone who would actually listen. So I did. I spent the first month holding one-on-one meetings with every department head. I walked the factory floor. I sat in on customer service calls. I answered emails directly. I let people tell me what they thought needed fixing, and then I let them help fix it. We didn't just rebuild our logistics platform, we redesigned the culture. I implemented flexible work policies, increased transparency in budget reporting, and launched a profit-sharing program tied to innovation milestones. The difference was immediate. People started showing up early, smiling more, caring again, and I realized maybe leadership isn't about proving you deserve the seat. Maybe it's about making the seat matter. As the months passed, media picked up the story. At first, it was all whispers. CEO takes over after family fallout. But then came the deeper profiles, the recognition of my actual work. Forbes, Fast Company, even a profile in TechCrunch titled, "She wasn't invited, so she took the whole table." I got messages from young women in business school, in startups, in finance. Messages that broke my heart and fueled it all at once. My father gave the company to my brother, too. I thought it was just me. I thought I had to be quiet to be respected. You proved otherwise? Thank you for not letting them define you. And still, there were nights I sat alone in my apartment, lights low, and thought about the little girl who stayed up late helping her dad write code, thinking love was measured in approval. I wanted to hug her, and also tell her, one day, you'll stop asking them to see you, and you'll finally see yourself. My mother sent a card, no letter, no apology, just a cream envelope with neat cursive. You always were the strong one. Love, Mom, I didn't cry. I didn't respond. Some wounds heal, some don't. But either way, you learn to walk with the scar. As for my father, we haven't spoken since that last meeting. I hear he travels now, trying to find meaning in retirement. Maybe one day we'll talk again, maybe not. I don't need his acknowledgement anymore. The final turning point came on the one-year anniversary of the transition. I hosted a company-wide celebration at our newly renovated headquarters. Not a gala, not a red carpet spectacle, just our people, real stories, real wins. At the end of the night, I stood in front of everyone, raised a glass, and said, "This isn't just about a company, it's about never letting someone else define your worth. About choosing your own legacy, even when the people closest to you try to silence it. If no one gives you a seat, build your own table, and make sure it has room for others who were told they didn't belong." They stood, they clapped, some cried, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was reclaiming anything. I felt like I was becoming everything I was always meant to be. Because this legacy, it wasn't inherited, it was earned, and no one, not even family, could take it from me again. They told the world I wasn't interested. What they didn't know was I was just getting started.